fondue kind of family. At least when it comes to celebrating holidays, we're pretty fondue-oriented. I remember a time about 6 years ago. We'd done the shopping for one such celebration, and as my mom laid out the groceries on the counter, she said to my sister and I, "Don't eat any of the chocolate, okay? It's for the fondue party." So she leaves the room, comes back about 5 minutes later, and starts eating the chocolate. We were like, "What?" She leaves the room again, comes back, looks at the counter, and says incredulously, "Hey, who's been eating all the chocolate?" We just stared at her until finally my sister said, "You did, Mom." And she goes, "Oh." And we all started laughing. And we laughed really hard, but there was a trace of fright because she genuinely didn't remember eating any of the chocolate. And that was one of the first signs of my mother's ongoing battle with an undiagnosed disease. In the past 6 years, my mom has experienced 17 cerebral hemorrhages, meaning her brain has bled 17 times, which is not supposed to happen. And each time it does, it results in permanent brain damage. 2 elements in her blood, her fibrinogen and her D-dimer, spike and hang out in deadly realms, but one is a coagulator and one is a thinner, so you can't treat one without worsening the other. We have been told multiple times that my mom is going to die. Yet, with impeccable regularity each fall and each spring, her blood counts rise and her brain bleeds. And each time this happens, she opens her eyes to a completely new existence. Sometimes her motor skills no longer exist, her word recall diminishes, her balance lost, or her vision compromised. But she rises. Miraculously, she is still breathing, living, and laughing and loving, and more fully than anyone I know. When I was a freshman in college, she missed her birthday while in a 2-month coma. And in order to be released from the rehabilitation hospital, she needed to pass their exit exam. One of the questions asked her her age, and she got that question wrong. Understandably so. But she was so feisty about it, and the teacher in her just couldn't handle the -1 that appeared in red ink. Like, how was I supposed to know I'm 50? And she laughed like that was the funniest thing. She's talked to me about having an invisible disease or an ailment that isn't readily apparent when looking at another person. People will ask her how she's doing, and that's become a more challenging question to answer in the past few years. Inevitably, somebody will always respond, "Well, you look great." I saw how deep that cut my mom because she struggles mightily to get through each day, and that is an honest truth. I've seen how her comprehension has slowed. I've heard her repeat things back to me and wondered how in the world she ever heard what she heard. I've witnessed people treat her disrespectfully because they can't tell by looking that she is cognitively impaired. I've seen her trip and stumble and fall because her balance is off and her vision is too. What she thinks she sees and what's actually there is off by 1.5 feet. And I've heard people audacious enough to ask why she's parked in the handicapped space. But what they can't know and what they can't see is that some days she forgets our names. Some days she has full conversations with people, and then when they leave, she turns to me with kind of a guilty smile and says, "I don't know who that was." Some days she falls and hits her head on our Honda Insight, and my sister and I drive her all over town trying to find a doctor who trusts a 15 and a 17-year-old when they say they think their mom has a concussion, while she stands behind them and says proudly and repeatedly, "It gave me new insight. It gave me new insight." Some days she breaks her shoulder and gets a black eye on top of everything else. Some days there are hallucinations, there's memory loss, and sometimes she tells the same story so many times that I don't know whether to laugh or to seriously break down and cry. But we adapt. We've even developed this system where we hold up our fingers to indicate the number of times we've heard a story. That way, if she starts to tell us one she's already told us, she can know, and she can facepalm herself and flash tens of hundreds of fingers at us, and we can all laugh. Her word recall has also become a little bit atrocious at times. I remember a time when somebody in my family was crying and they were apologizing about the tears they were shedding. My mom just reassuringly rubbed their back and said, "Don't worry. If more people cried, the world would be less constipated." But through it all, Through searching for the words and for the names and for the skills that no longer seem to be there, my mom has been a towering pillar of strength, humor, grace, and dignity. Because of this illness and because of the way my mom has handled it, I have learned so many lessons. I learned that we can't always know what's happening in another person's life. If somebody is rude to my mom or short or cuts us off on the highway or whatever it is, she never gets mad or frustrated. She just says, let's say a prayer for them, because she knows anything could be happening in that person's life. I want to walk through this world more like my mom. I want to be more kind and more patient. And I want to be more cognizant of the fact that everybody is fighting a hard battle, whether we can see it on the surface or not. And the best thing we can do for somebody who struggles or manifesting in ways that are impacting how they are treating other people is to be kind to them. Always when in the hospital, my mom teases the nurses. She calls them darling and she asks them questions. She checks in on their kids, and when they're decked out in their blue and orange, she asks them about the Boise State football score, even though I know she doesn't care. She thanks them with sincerity, even when they wake her up at 4 a.m. to check her vitals. Even though all of the circumstances are wrong, and even though everything is unfair, she has gratitude. She has this immense capability to see joy, and she finds beauty everywhere, in the most trying of situations and in the darkest of storms. And she showed me that I can see beauty there too. All I have to do is choose to look. Most days, I am baffled by how a woman whose own brain has turned against her, who has relearned to walk more times than a baby tries to stand in a single day, who has lost the ability to read music when that had been her passion and profession for 24 years. How does a woman like that continue to rise, and rise again? Especially when it would be so easy to be angry. And I know it would be easy to be angry because I am angry. There are days I am so frustrated that I make the world less constipated. But I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be angry. It's just some days I am bitter, I am mad. Some days I am mean to my mom because I don't know who she is anymore and I don't know what to do about that. Sometimes I don't have patience. I don't call her back or call her at all. Sometimes I don't even open her emails because I am so stupidly annoyed that I can't recognize her voice, that I can't know her mannerisms or know what she's going to say when I need her to say it most. I've resented her for changing, but I'm working on that. And I hope with all of my being that she can forgive me. But I know she already has. Watching my mom be graceful about her struggles, watching her laugh about the not-so-curious case of the missing chocolate, or about how she thought she saw two women on horseback riding down the street when it was really just a mother with a stroller. It inspires me and reminds me that there is always better reason to choose joy. And I haven't mastered it yet, but I'm working on that too. I'm working on forgiveness, on forgiving whatever force has handed my mom this journey, and on forgiving myself for being angry about it. I'm working on loving my mom just where she's at, because there's beauty in that storm, and I see it every day. I see it there because my mom has taught me that we all have choices about how we choose to handle the challenges we face, and about how we harness our own energy in the face of those challenges. She showed me what it looks like to rise. And I want to rise like her. I will rise. We will rise. Thank you. And happy birthday, Mom.